Hello everyone, this is Messy Stitcher, Vicky. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much to people that took the time to view my video yesterday when I uploaded them. I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of thought that I probably would maybe get a couple of views of people that I'd commented on videos, but I didn't expect. I think I had about 32 views, so I'm really happy with that. The main reason I'm doing this is really just to kind of be part of the community and kind of see how everybody else's cross stitches and kind of join the conversation really. But it's still really nice to think that people took time out to kind of look through my videos, and I know one of them was very long, so thank you very much. I'm continuing to enjoy everyone else's videos. I think every day I must watch hours and hours, which is really bad, but I just really enjoy them. So today is Mother's Day in the UK. I don't know if it's the same day all around the world. And it kind of got me thinking about what was going to be my third and final kind of introduction video, which was my kind of stitching story. And I guess it all starts with my stepmom, actually. It's funny because my actual mum is very, very crafty, and she's kind of what I would call an all-rounder. She kind of does a bit of everything. She can do knitting, crochet, cross stitch, paper craft. She's always been kind of very creative, and she's very artistic as well, which I'm not. I like cross stitch because it's very methodical, and I feel like there's a limited, I don't think it makes it simple. I actually don't think that, but I like the fact that there are 4 or 5 key stitches, and that's kind of what you're going to get. But there are so many ways to kind of use those, and the variation comes with things like the thread and the fabric more. But I've never really been able to get into other crafts very well, which I'll come on to. So my mum herself is very crafty, but I would say out of all of the things that she does, cross stitch probably isn't like her key focus. It's not the main thing that she enjoys to do. But the first person that introduced me to cross stitching was my stepmum. You'll probably get to know as I go along with my videos, and the more I kind of reveal about myself, that my family is very complicated, and probably too complicated to try and explain now in a cross-stitch based video. But who I call my stepmom isn't really my stepmom, she's my ex-stepmom, but that's what I call her, and I always think about her on Mother's Day, just the same as my own mum. So I think, it seems quite young, but I'm fairly sure I must have been about 8 years old when I first started cross-stitching, because I remember where my dad and stepmom were living at the time. So age-wise, I'm sure I must have been about 8. So I can't really remember. I remember it being one of those kind of kits. I'm actually quite surprised that it wasn't one of those really simple kits. It was actually kind of a fairly standard cross-stitch kit that probably kind of quite intermediate. So it's probably why I didn't stick with it. But I remember it. The first kit that she ever bought for me was, I think it might have been a Country Companions one or something like that, kind of a kind of cutesy one with hedgehogs and teddies and stuff. And I think I can't remember exactly how I started, but I remember watching her doing it, and I really enjoyed the look of it. I remember her teaching me how to put the threads on the sorter and how to use a cross stitch hoop. I don't use hoops now, actually. I know that will shock a lot of people, but I just don't get on with them. I've got a really good wooden frame for kind of bigger projects that my mum got me for Christmas, which is a stand-up thing that I use with the magnifying lamp for kind of the more complex ones that I do, and that's really good. But hoops, it's probably my technique, but actually trying to keep the fabric taut and keep adjusting them all the time, and I kind of like scrunching fabric up in my hands anyway when I'm working. So but I do, my first memory of cross stitch is kind of having this kind of wooden hoop that she'd given me in this kit that she bought for me, and we just used to kind of sit on the sofa, and she kind of taught me to kind of tick things off in pencil, and how you kind of, you know, cast on and cast off. I've adapted my technique about things, like I use the loop method now, which I've literally just discovered, which I can't believe. But I guess like where it all began was there. So I think up until right from that age, up until the age of about 15, cross stitch was something that I really enjoyed, that occasionally I would go and buy a kit from somewhere like Hobbycraft or from some sort of shop that I went to. But I mean obviously YouTube and that wasn't such a big thing then. I didn't really watch videos or anything, so I think it was probably a case of every once in a blue moon, maybe once a year, I would buy some sort of a kit and maybe have a start when I felt really excited by it the week that I bought it, and then kind of leave it. I didn't really have any commitment to it. I wouldn't have called it kind of a main hobby at that point. And then I think it was when I was, probably when I got to about 15, it started to be something that I actually took a bit more seriously, and I kind of did more often. I had tried, as I say, I come from a crafty family, so I've always been, like, my grandma and granddad always used to knit jumpers for charity. My mum was usually, my mum's main thing I'd say is crochet, so she was always kind of crocheting blankets and bits and pieces like that. And I tried a few things. So my grandma taught me to knit kind of at a very basic level, and knitting has never been my thing. I mean, I think it's amazing when people do it, and I love looking at knitted stuff, but the actual way that it works just doesn't really suit me. I have tried crochet a few times, and I prefer crochet to knitting, and I really enjoyed sort of having a go, but again, didn't really take to it. I'm sure if I persevered, I may have got the hang of it, but I kind of think you kind of instinctively know whether something's going to be your thing or not, and it isn't really, so I leave that one to my mum. So when I was about 15, was around the age when I started going regularly to craft shows with my mum and with my aunt, who usually go twice a year. And I've mentioned it before, I normally go to the Alexandra Palace Olympia ones that they do in London. So that was when kind of, I guess, the pattern began of me going to these events, maybe buying a couple of kits when I was there, and actually working on things a little bit more regularly. As you saw from my stash video yesterday, it still by no means was this regular thing that I did all the time, because what would tend to happen is I got really obsessed with it for maybe even 2 months, and I would do kind of the start of a project, or I'd do all of the prep. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I would have done all the prep and kind of written down all the symbols of threads and sorted them all out and stitched around the edge of the fabric to stop it fraying and all that stuff, but I didn't actually get on with starting it, or I would do a very small patch and just leave it for absolutely ages. And I think that's just natural, because I was a teenager, I had other stuff going on, I was probably too busy, I don't know, getting drunk and doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing and things, to sit and do cross stitch. But I kind of always came back to it. Like every now and then I would pick it back up again. And as I say, that one the one of the kind of garden gate that I showed you yesterday, which I think I was planning to do for my grandma, is a prime example of me having kind of made a start and just putting it down, and the novelty wore off. And I guess what's changed in more recent years is that novelty hasn't worn off. So it isn't the case anymore that I just go and buy a kit, I get really excited and I forget about it. It's a regular thing now. I have kind of I don't have an area in my house, but I have a bag of my cross stitch stash. I regularly work on things, and I'm trying to think when that changed. I think the time I would say I properly became someone that would call cross stitch a hobby, and it became a regular commitment for me, was about 2 years ago. And I think it must have been probably through the process. It's really hard to remember, but I imagine it was when we stopped renting, moved in with Adam's parents, and I was probably sorting through things and found all these kind of random bits of cross stitching stuff. And I think I just got back into it, and it became sort of in line with trying to save money and didn't really work, but not spending loads and loads of money going out all the time. I began to use my cross stitch stash as a way of kind of spending my free time, really. I've always been, it's funny because people that meet me and even my friends don't always see this, but I know that I am an introvert. It's weird. I'm kind of a sociable introvert in that I do have quite a few friends. I do enjoy getting to know people. I do go out and about quite a lot, but I'm at my happiest, which sounds really bad, but I am at my happiest when I'm just spending time completely on my own. I need a lot of quiet time to not feel stressed. So most of the time I feel stressed, and I'm quite an anxious person. And things like cross stitch I found are very therapeutic because it gives you something to focus on. I think there's something about having a sense of achievement that comes from finishing something and having worked on it really hard. And I think it started to be a really helpful distraction for me through a couple of years where I've had some really horrible kind of not great life stuff happen. And I think maybe it sounds really cheesy, but it's always been there as something to kind of that I can do in the background. So that's when that kind of started really, and then I think I gradually got to a point where it was, as I say, not so much just something that I would pick up and put down, but something that I would work on regularly. So it's always been something that's helped to calm me down, and when I feel anxious, I find that it helps me focus by doing something quite methodical. And there's quite a lot of research to suggest that craft really helps anxiety because when people are able to, I guess it's a bit of a mindful, I don't know if you're familiar with mindfulness, we talk about it a lot in my field of work, but it's a bit of a mindfulness thing where if you can get somebody to fully concentrate on being in the moment, things that they are anxious about or things that they're concerned about, it is a very positive distraction, and by the time you get round to finishing that thing, that craft, usually the anxiety is dissipated, and that's what I tend to find, so it's really, really helped me. So I think the last couple of years it's only really been in the last year that I've really started finishing things and kind of actually worked. So I have, as I told you in the last video, I have finished 2 quite big projects for my friend and for my grandma. But those took a very long time to do, and it was kind of, I think I used to be a lot slower. The more recent couple of things that I've finished have been much more a case of I actually work on it for a couple of hours a day, more so at weekends. I've had a methodical way of working on it, and I finish something, and so it's much more, I can see a change in how that's evolved really. I really kind of can chart things that have happened in my life through the hobby, so I can tell that usually what happens is when I have times when something really stressful and really busy is happening, it used to be the case that that's when cross stitch used to be put down and I wouldn't have time for it, and I really wanted to do it, but there was all this other stuff going on. But it's actually the opposite now. I find that if I've got lots of stressful things happening, or I'm feeling really anxious, or I kind of have taken control a bit more and decided it's really important to give myself the time to do something that I enjoy doing and to not compromise on that, because you can very easily fall into the pattern of thinking you don't have time to do this stuff, but actually as much as time pressured as everybody is, when you work full time and you've got other commitments, there is always time to do stuff that you enjoy. It's just how you prioritise your spare time really. And I think because it's a very important thing for me, and because it means more than just doing a craft, it means that I have a bit of an escape from kind of lots of anxious thoughts that go round and round in my head all the time. I've learned that if I prioritise that, it has a knock-on effect of actually making me feel happier and making me feel a little bit more, not frantic, I suppose. And I guess that's natural. I guess it's like anything, like you're bound to feel better if you're giving yourself a chance to focus on something that you really enjoy and you feel like you've actually had a bit of your own time. So that's what I really like about it. So I'm trying to think in terms of my taste, I suppose that's the last thing to talk about. So how my taste has changed over time. So a bit like my music and my movie taste, my taste in cross stitch is very eclectic. I can kind of really enjoy, like I said, because I'm drawn to very bright colours and things with lots of colour change to keep interest. I can be very drawn to kind of what are basically like children designs, right through to things that are quite kind of edgy, like some of the Heaven and Earth designs. And one of my favourite cross stitch shops on Etsy, which I've never yet bought anything from, is Unconventional X, I think it's called, and they have really kind of cool racy kind of designs that are really different and modern. And I like the idea that cross stitch can kind of shock people, because it's not just these really cutesy little samplers in country cottages. It's actually, you can do some really cool kind of quite edgy modern stuff with it as well. So I think my taste has always been quite like that, but I think kind of it has evolved as well. So I used to I guess like things that were quite I used to be overly ambitious sometimes, so I used to buy things and think that I was going to get them done in like 2 months and then realise that I couldn't. And I've always had this sort of preference for things that are bigger, and I think that's because the smaller a kit is, normally there's less detail, and sometimes I don't like things that look too blocky or less detailed. I like to and I think that's why I like Heaven and Earth designs, is that there's so many stitches to them that even with using full stitches you just get this amazing detail. But I've actually kind of gone a little bit more towards quick finishes and smaller things in the last 6 months, and that's because I've learned that actually there's something really satisfying about being able to finish a project within a couple of months, rather than it being this ongoing thing that you beat yourself up about for not finishing. So the Lizzie Kate designs, for example, don't tend to be particularly detailed. They are more or less just text with a few little pictures in. But I just, that one won yesterday, I made a start on it already, and you can see how quickly it will come together because it's block stitching. It's not, the whole page isn't covered with lots of cross stitch for the background and stuff, and it's nice that I know that I could probably finish that in about a month. And I think doing the historical sampler company, Love Sampler, really was good for me, because I learnt that something that is what I would have called blocky before, kind of not much colour changing going on all the time, was actually really satisfying, and kind of I managed to get it done in quite good time. So I've really got into Heaven and Earth designs since, I guess that coincided with me being more part of the YouTube scene, so watching cross-stitch bloggers talk about it. It's funny with Heaven and Earth designs, because I know that there is a bit of a kind of, I mentioned it in my other video, that some people I think view it as, oh, everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon and it's just this kind of trend and this craze, which I guess it is, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that, it's what makes you happy, really. I think some people would say that they're the kind of designs that they really commit to, and they do one or two, but they're not going to sort of spend their whole life taking ages to finish things, and they want to kind of have a bit more variety with what they do. I think people like me that are quite new to it, I mean, because I'm quite new to the whole Heaven and Earth thing, obviously at the moment it's really amazing to me. I can't promise that that's how I'll feel about it in a couple of years' time, but I'm really looking forward to finishing my design that I'm working on. And there's something I really like about kind of fantasy, so fantasy art and magical stuff and things like that has been much more how my taste has evolved now. So I still like, so I can still pick up quite traditional things. So the Jane Greenough sampler that I showed you in the other video, I think most people would be quite surprised that that's my taste, because it's quite kind of traditional. And it's funny because I can be really drawn to things like that. Then the other side of it, I like really edgy kind of stuff. I like fantasy art because it really reminds me of books that I like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and Game of Thrones and stuff, so it kind of feeds into that kind of escapism thing, and I just think that they tend to have amazing colours in them, and there's something really mystical about them. So fantasy art is kind of where if I had, in an ideal world, if I had however much money I could spend on cross stitch, that would be what I would choose to spend my money on, I suppose. Obviously I can't always buy really, what goes along with liking really detailed fantasy art cross stitches like Heaven and Earth is that, you're talking about paying at least £80 for a cross stitch, which is a lot of money, and I'm sure a lot of people don't have that kind of money to spend on cross stitch all the time. But sometimes it's about the difference between investing in a kind of nice expensive piece or kind of smaller, more budget ones. So I guess sometimes, like, what I've learned to think about Heaven and Earth designs is that they're more of an investment. So I kind of started off thinking, oh, my taste has changed quite a lot, but it's probably not, because it has always been very kind of varied. So I suppose it's kind of, I've continued to do that, but I have particular interests that I like. So kind of, I quite like, I didn't used to be massively into Joan Elliott stuff, but I've lately got into quite a lot of the Joan Elliott kind of fairy designs, because they're a lot more detailed than I remember them being before, and they seem to go really nicely with the hand-dyed fabrics that you can get, and I've sort of seen quite a lot of them on this website called Pole Stitch Designs, and I've also seen a few of the mirabilia. Doesn't massively appeal to me, but I've seen a few designs of fairies and mermaids and things which I like, which I might give a try. But I think to add interest to them, I'd probably use them on a hand-dyed. Try having a go at doing them on hand-dyed fabric, just to add a bit of depth to the design and everything. So I think now I can't imagine. I'm now at the point where I can't imagine cross stitch not being a hobby. And obviously I've really got into YouTube and watching people's videos and stuff, so I can't imagine ever not being interested in it. And my lovely vision, which I wish would be the case, is that when I move into my new house, it will eventually build up a collection of things that can kind of be displayed on the walls and in rooms. And I kind of that's the other thing to say, I went through a stage of everything I stitch being about giving somebody else a present, but now that I'm going to have my own space, it will be really nice to have things for myself that I can make. So it's the next phase for me is about making stuff that me and Adam can enjoy in our house, and things that mean something to me, I suppose. So yeah, I think I've kind of probably come a long way since when I was 8 and I was stitching kind of hedgehogs and stuff. And I think that one of the biggest things I've noticed is the change in how long things take me to finish. But it's probably no surprise. It's probably less the fact that I've, you know, really sped up how quickly one stitch takes me to do. It's probably more about the fact that I actually kind of carve out time to do things now. I reckon on most days I get at least, I'd probably say in a week I get about an hour a day, and then on the weekends I could honestly sit there for sort of 6-7 hours and do it, but it obviously depends on what other stuff I've got going on. So it's kind of quite exciting to come into that phase where I know that I'm going to finish things, and it actually feels, I used to work on things knowing that they'd probably get put down and they'd never go anywhere. So it's something quite different about stitching and making something that you actually realise is going to be in a frame at some point. It's a bit of a novelty to me still. So that's me. That's kind of what took me up to stitching. An interesting question I thought to ask you guys, really anybody that watches this video, I'd be really interested in your comments, is what craft would you like to try that you've never tried? I was thinking about this the other day and thinking that if I had to, I've tried crochet, I've tried knitting, I really like them, as I say, but they're not really my thing. The thing that I've always really wanted to have a go at is quilting. So I like those really big kind of patchwork American quilts, kind of quite traditional ones, and I don't even know how to use a sewing machine, let alone how to stitch things together, quilt them, make the design that I see goes on top of the blanket. I tend to think of myself as somebody that doesn't like learning new things, but when I think of other parts of my life, I actually have learned, you know, when I've started new jobs and things, I've learned things fairly quickly. But with craft, I'm always quite hesitant, and I kind of don't really persevere whenever I try something new. I wouldn't go so far as to say this year I'm going to start quilting. I think I've got enough cross stitch things to keep me going, but it would be something that I would think about for the future. So yeah, what would be your craft that you would try if you could? So I'd be really interested to hear that. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, those of you that have. I'm really pleasantly surprised by that. Please feel free to like, comment, give me some feedback on anything that you'd like me to talk about. My next video, I don't really have a set subject for that yet because I've done my free introduction videos. Don't know quite how long it's going to take me to post it. I guess we'll see how busy this week is. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like to say, please do, and I'll continue to check all of your lovely videos out too. So thank you very much for watching, and happy stitching. Bye.